Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Hope you all had a great weekend. For today's video, we're going to be going back to the question period today as Pierre continues to push forth on this whole BC drug situation, which is great. And we're also going to be taking a look at an interview he did with Global News. Now, he did about a 12-13 minute interview. I'll probably play about 2 minutes of that interview just because I thought the answer was really great for that question. But before we get into it, I just want to address something I've been seeing in the comments lately, and it's about some comments about why is this guy talking about Canadian stuff if he's Portuguese, or oh, he's Portuguese, says a lot about what he knows about Canada. Yes, I am Portuguese in my background. My parents are Portuguese, that's where they're from, but I am Canadian born. I was born here, born and raised. And although I'm very proud of being Portuguese from my background, from my roots, I am still proud to be Canadian. And the other comments I see a lot is like, what's up with the name of the channel? Now, although I don't have a channel name like a lot of these other Canadian commentators or Canadian political people, whoever you watch, but the reason my name is the way it is because when I became a father, in Portuguese, pai means dad or father. And so I thought it was funny at the time when I did become a dad, where I was drawing. I drew that piece of pie with the Portuguese flag inside, Portuguese pie. Now, if you don't know what pie means, it's still sort of a double entendre where you can see the image and you say, oh, it's a slice of pie that is Portuguese, Portuguese pie. So that's it. I'm a Portuguese dad. I'm a Canadian dad, whatever you want to call it. But with that being said, let's get into today's question period, and it starts off with this.
Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. It has now been 10 days and 60 dead British Columbians since the government of that province has asked the Prime Minister to reverse his deadly and radical legalization of crack, heroin, and other hard drugs in children's parks, hospitals, on transit. Why will he not reverse his radical agenda?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Addictions and Health.
Mr. Speaker, communities in BC are facing an extremely serious challenge. It is a toxic drug supply on the streets and people are dying. We know that public consumption is an issue of concern, which is exactly why, Mr. Speaker, BC is amending their proposal, and we have been working with them every step of the way. We're treating this with the urgency it deserves, and all partners are at the table right now, Mr. Speaker, to find the path forward, working with law enforcement and health services so that we get this right and save lives, Mr. Speaker.
Bravo. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, to find a path forward, the path forward is obvious. Ban hard drugs, invest in treatment, bring our loved ones home drug-free. Now, that minister claimed last week that she was waiting for the BC government to provide information before she could decide on reversing radical legalization. It turns out the government had given her that information within hours of the request. She has all the information, so why are her and her radical boss clinging on to this insane policy?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and
Mr.
Addictions.
Speaker, on this side of the House, we follow science, we follow healthcare experts, and we follow the information. We are working with BC on a comprehensive amendment to their proposal. This takes collaborative work, Mr. Speaker, to get it right. This is a health issue, Mr. Speaker, not a criminal one. The Leader of the Opposition is misleading Canadians in not recognizing that people need health care. They do not need to be re-stigmatized and criminalized.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Abbotsford Soccer Association wrote a letter entitled "A Cry for Change." Volunteers with the organization have found dirty needles that can puncture innocent children in the playing field. Other BC fields have had women and overdose, have found addicts naked, have had pets actually overdose because there's so much drug contamination on the site. What are they thinking over there?
Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, a pilot project was put in place at BC's request. BC now has serious concerns about some aspects of that. We share those concerns and we are addressing them. But I do want to say, Mr. Speaker, I do not think there is a family in Canada that is untouched by the tragedy of opioids. And I think that it is absolutely abhorrent to try to score political points off the pain of Canadians.
Now, I don't know about you, but I find it to be absolutely wild that 10 days later, as Pierre stated, this policy still hasn't been reversed. The drugs are still decriminalized. And you heard him go on to a little spiel about the dogs finding drugs and toddlers finding drugs and this and that. And I've seen some comments saying that's always going to be at the parks. And I will agree. There, to some degree, you're always going to find that kind of stuff potentially at a park or near a park or wherever the case may be. But the prevalence is increased when you have these things decriminalized in parks, in hospitals, on transit. All that stuff greatly increases the chances of individuals coming in contact with this stuff that normally would never come in contact with that stuff. And that doesn't help the population. That doesn't help anybody really when you're putting now more people at risk or harm of encountering these drugs, especially these deadly drugs like fentanyl. But if we move away from that for a second and we look at what Chrystia Freeland said, I was actually quite surprised she didn't try to throw out that white supremacy, white nationalist rhetoric like they have been for the past few days. She did try to pander and say we care about people and we're not trying to use this as a political football in a sense. But when I mentioned earlier the Global News interview, this is actually where they brought that up. And this interview had a lot of like kind of wokey talking points, very progressive talking points. But I thought what Pierre did here when he got this question about Alex Jones was great.
Alex Jones, well-known commentator in the States, has said that he would like to see you as Prime Minister. He endorses you. He's also someone who peddled conspiracy theories around the murder of children at Sandy Hook Elementary. Do you accept his endorsement, the idea that he would like for you to be the Prime Minister?
No. And I don't listen to his, I don't listen to him. The only person that talks about and promotes him is Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau has really gotten into promoting a lot of conspiracy theories. And he is, I think, Canada's top conspiracy theorist. And this is from a guy who dressed up in racist costumes so many times he can't remember them all, who is now causing death and destruction by legalizing crack, heroin, and cocaine in BC, who lets out repeat violent offenders, says he admires the basic Chinese communist dictatorship, has doubled our national debt, doubled housing costs, now wants to force a 61 cent a litre carbon tax on Canadians. That's the kind of radical extremism that we have in our Prime Minister, and he is the one that should reject his and repent for his radicalism so that we can bring home a common sense government that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
Man, I am so surprised he stayed throughout this whole interview because even I wanted to leave halfway through as these questions were just liberal talking points getting thrown at Pierre. But he lined him up, knocked him out of the park, was very steadfast with his answers. And now he's answers the Justin Trudeau's question if he denounces Alex Jones. He says he does. He can't use Diagolon, I feel like, either, because over 2 years ago, as I mentioned in another video, Pierre already said that they were losers and he didn't want to deal with them after what they said about his wife. So we'll see if the Liberals keep trying to peddle this white supremacy, far right, white nationalist type of talking points to cause the divide. But as always, I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you thought about this whole situation. Don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section below. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.